Okay, so like I said, a lot of interesting stuff. Let me kind of remind you where we're at. Obviously, Hitler built up a lot of goodwill with the Olympics. Then he rearmed the Rhineland in 1936 against the Treaty of Versailles. There was no response from the French or the British, which might be deemed a example of what? Appeasement. Thank you. Okay. So as we move through this, we're looking at three kind of focal themes. Okay. Isolationism of the United States. Okay. And other nations. Appeasement, which is giving up your principles to avoid conflict. And isolation, appeasement, and today, neutrality. Okay, so if we remain neutral, then the chances of us getting involved in a conflict are decreased, yes? Okay, so Roosevelt sees what's happening in Africa and Ethiopia, sees what's happening in Germany, okay? And guys, the thing about the Germans is this. When Hitler wrote Mein Kampf, it's a playbook. He's telling the world what he wants to do. And I don't know if you remember that term from the first slide, Lebensraum, which means living space or living room for the German people. This is all in there, okay? And how the Germans have a right to rule, a Third Reich, to rule for 1,000 years, the superiority, all that crap. It's in his book. All you have to do is read it, okay? So, Roosevelt's concerned about what's happening. Of course, with the Japanese and China and so forth, he says, you know, the world is going to be engulfed in war if this type of aggression continues, okay? Now, when you start to look at this, when we read Roosevelt's words from this time period, understand, he's a politician, okay? There's Maria. Let me pin you there. Okay. He's a politician, okay? So he is trying to speak to the American people, the American mentality, the mindset of the American people. So he calls for a quarantine of aggressor nations. Now, guys, boy, do we know what a quarantine is, right? Okay, holy cow. So now think about this. That would mean we would isolate other nations. Nations that are belligerent, nations that are starting conflicts, we would quarantine them. Now, is that going to put us in a place of diplomacy with those nations or in a place of conflict with those nations if we quarantine them? Yeah. Do we want conflict? No. These are just words. We will not actually do this. You understand? Okay. So, so Americans, and this slide's really going to speak to the American people, okay, and where they feel about all this stuff, okay. So the American people had not forgotten the slaughter of World War II. There's one map, okay. So we're going to classify Americans, the American people, in a few different areas here, okay. So many Americans said never again. You did have some become pacifists. So I'm not saying a large segment of the population becomes pacifists, okay, but there were quite a few people that did, all right? And so they said no war for any reason. We're not gonna go through. Remember how many people died in World War I? I mean, just soldiers wise, between 8 and 9 million, okay? And then the casualties of war, civilian and soldiers, are close to 40 million, okay? So you can see why some people are like, we need to avoid war at all costs, okay? Because this could happen again, and it will, okay? Most Americans just believe in this idea of isolationism, which if we can stay out of other people's business, then we will not be drawn into this conflict. We'll stay safely on the other side of the Atlantic and not have to worry, okay? And then you had some, and some of probably your ancestors, okay? My German folk in here, all right? Don't think we have much in the way of Italian folk in here, but that recently emigrated from these countries, we talked about the immigration of the 1920s, right? And how many people were coming in around the turn of the century and so forth. Didn't really like the idea of fighting against what was recently their homeland. All right. And then you had a few that even wanted to become American Nazis. Okay, so this morning I was going to talk about. I just peeked at what I was going to talk about today, and I pulled up this article from the Atlantic, and I want to scroll through this article with you real quick, if I can find it. Yeah, there it is. The American Nazis of the 1930s. Okay, this is pretty interesting.
The title
Yeah, it's a thing though. Okay, so we should talk about it. So let me just show you. They have a lot of good pictures in here. Okay, so this is nearly 1,000 uniformed men wearing swastika armbands, carrying Nazi banners parade past a reviewing stand in New Jersey. This is 1937. Okay, New Jersey division of the German-American Bund opened its 100-acre camp, Nordland, in Sussex Hills. Okay. Spokesman of a group of Italian-American fascists attending guests addressed the Bund members as Nazi friends. German-American Bund camp. This is in New Jersey as well.
So was it only the German Americans or even
Italian and German, and we're like mutts in the United States, you know what I mean? So a lot of people have German blood, and then they have British blood or Italian blood or French or Scottish or Irish, right? Irish German, right? Yes, you see these mixes, okay? So this type of propaganda with, this talk about blood, what blood you have in you is, well, it can be dangerous, especially in this time period. Yeah.
More on, we don't actually, most people would not follow it nowadays because, at least in America, because no one in America is actually a legit blood.
Right. Right.
People would think about it.
Yes. Well, the people that tend to join these types of groups tend to be ignorant. You know what I mean? So they don't know how to think very well. All right. So they don't think through what you just thought through. Okay.
So basically, they're like signing up for a camp that wants to kill them because they think that
they may have some other blood in them that, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is Los Angeles, California. Okay. So, guys, this is not isolated to one area of the United States. This is New York. Look at this. See the American flag and the Nazi flag. Andover, New Jersey.
Did the government not do anything about this?
This is a free country. You are allowed to be a Nazi today. You can be a communist, you can be a socialist, you can be a capitalist, you can be anything you want in this country. You can fly the Nazi flag in the front of your house. Your neighbors probably are not going to take kindly to that. Okay? And your neighborhood association may pass some new bylaws that say you can't fly any flags. You know what I mean? But obviously those people would be shamed. Lily.
Okay. Did they do anything, like any acts of terrorism that would warrant like immediate action, or were they just like silent buttons?
They were, no, I mean, they did not carry out, from what I've read, there's not like a trend of Nazis, Americans bullying other people and stuff like that. Now, we did have the Klan, right, which could kind of fit in with this group, yes, all right, and so forth. So I just want to make you aware of this, okay, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about it now, okay. In every country that Hitler invades, and we're going to be getting to that in the next couple of slides, okay? there is a Nazi party in every one of those countries he invades. Okay? And historians refer to these groups as the fifth column. Okay, this is a term that goes back to Roman history. And we know the Romans conquered and conquered and conquered, yes, and expanded the Roman Empire. And the Romans figured out how to get good at this. Okay, so the Germans copied the Romans here in the fifth column. And so what they would do is they would go into these countries that they planned to invade. And it was really a softening up process, okay? So they established a Nazi party. There was one in Britain, there was one in France, there was one in Belgium, there was one in Denmark, every one of these countries. They would establish a Nazi party, and then the Nazi party there would do two things. They would build support for the Nazis in that country, okay, and talk about all the good things that the Nazis do. And then they would also destabilize. Try and destabilize the government that was in power there. A destabilized government is easier to take over and defeat than one that is stable. You following me? So that was the role of the Nazi fifth column, was to do those two things. Okay? And in some cases, they were very effective, especially in Austria. Okay, their neighbor to the south. Okay, which we'll talk about. All right. So just, yeah, remember the fifth column there. And when we look at American isolationism, okay, in this picture here, this is taken in New York City. They had a rally in Madison Square Garden with 20,000 people, the American Nazi Party. Okay, and there were some protesters that showed up, and there was some violence. So you brought up, did we see like violence in the streets like we did in Germany with the Nazis? Nothing close to that. But when the protesters showed up, they were beaten, grabbed, and taken out. Okay, and there's video of that you could pull up on YouTube. Not just YouTube Nazi American Party, and there's lots of videos. Okay, so this America's First crowd. All right, and this is a political cartoon dated from 1930, really probably about 1940. Okay, and I don't know if you can read this, but the names on the horse here, this is kind of a Paul Revere cartoon. Okay, the British are coming, the British are coming. Senator Wheeler, Charles Lindbergh, you know that name, okay? Senator Nye, and America First campaign. Now, this is something we heard during the Trump administration. America First, this is in a different context with Trump, is he's talking about America First when it comes to business, U.S. citizens, and that sort of thing, okay? But this says Roosevelt is a warmonger, which he wasn't, okay? Nothing can crush Hitler but a negotiated peace. Sounds like appeasement to me, right? Hitler don't want to fight us. We haven't a thing to fight with. Sounds a little bit defeatist. This is Britain's war. Make Pepper quit picking on us. Senator Pepper was trying to help the British, and so forth. Okay, so this is kind of where you see the American people in the mid-1930s. Okay. The next slide, we're going to see some congressional action here, okay, when it comes to this fear of getting involved in a war. And when we went back to the first days of this history class, we talked about the Spanish-American War that was fought in both Cuba and on the other side of the world in the Philippines. And then we had the Philippine insurrection against the American troops because we were freeing the Philippines from the Spanish, just like Cuba. But then we decided to take over, okay? And the Filipinos didn't want us to, and there was an insurrection, and we stopped it. And now the Philippines is an American territory. And just look at the proximity here between the Philippines and Japan, okay? So as the Japanese continue to expand further south, in what will become known for them, the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, this is a logical place for the Japanese to expand to. We have naval bases here. So if the Japanese want to control Southeast Asia and the South Pacific, they're going to need to take the Philippines strategically, yes? So we're worried about that. We have tens of thousands of Americans living, working, civilian, and military in the Philippines. And if the Japanese attack the Philippines, we're going to have to go to war. So Congress passes the Tidings-McDuffie Act, which says to the world, the United States will be granting the Philippines their independence in 12 years. As if to say to the Japanese, wait, we're going to be leaving soon. Don't invade the Philippines. We'll be gone in 12 years. This may be construed as a form of what? Appeasement. Okay, again. All right. Now, U.S. was basically asking Japan not to attack until we left. They will not wait. Okay. So December 7th, 1941, a date that every American knows, Pearl Harbor. That same day, at the same time, the Philippines will be attacked. Okay. And anybody read a book over this? Not in here. Okay. I think in one of my other history classes, somebody read a book about the invasion of the Philippines. Okay. And actually, the Americans will be overrun here. Okay. We will fight, and we will lose. Okay. And I'm reading a book right now about the American prisoners of war in the Philippines that were there from 1941 until 1945, the ones that survived. Okay. So I'll have a homework assignment for you. You guys are due for another one, aren't you? Did we do one over 20 yet? No. I'll send you one. I can get it over the break. I won't make it due right at the beginning. I'll give you some time when you get back if you want to do it. Just if you want to work over the break, you can. If not, you can take it easy. Okay. All right. Sound good? Okay. I'll try and post that tomorrow. And I do have a question about what becomes known as the Bataan Death March here in the Philippines, okay? Which is an important part of American history. All right, so you got that. And then 1934 and 35, we're going to start passing some neutrality acts. Congress is going to make this law, all right? So in 1934-35, they prevented the United States from sending arms, any weapons, any bullets, any bombs, anything like that, any military equipment to nations at war. Okay? Now, who is this going to affect first? Obviously, anybody like Ethiopia, China, or the Republican government in Spain. Okay? And if you remember, in the Spanish Civil War, between 1936 and 1939, the fascists were helping Franco, and the Russians, the Soviets, were helping the Republican government, which is weird. We were not. Okay, we're staying out of it. All right. Now, what's going to happen with these neutrality acts, guys, is that they will evolve over the 1930s. So this is the first ones. Okay. So as we move to 1935, 36, 37, they'll start to evolve, okay, as things get worse. If you look at this map real quick, and I'll have other maps like this, but if you see this dotted line going around here, this is the furthest expansion of the Japanese Empire during World War II, okay, this dotted line. Okay. You can see they get pretty far. All right, including, this is British-controlled Burma. All right, today it's called Myanmar. All right, French Indochina. Okay, this is the Dutch East Indies down here, what we call Indonesia today. Okay. Like I said, I'll have other maps on this. All right, so neutrality 1937. Okay, so just continuing with what we were talking about. Okay, so by 1937, things start to get a little bit worse. And so the United States starts to loosen up the thing with arms and sending arms. Okay, so what we changed is that we're going to allow some sale of weapons to nations at war. Generally, a belligerent nation is a nation at war. It's a term that's really used more in World War I than World War II, belligerent nations. Okay, and they're going to use, this will be done on a cash and carry basis. So if Britain wants to buy weapons from us, or France, they have to bring their ships into our ports, pay cash. Remember those war debts that the Europeans owed us after World War I, that $9 billion? This time they're paying up front, they're paying cash. Okay? So you got to pay cash, and then you carry back the weapons with you. Here's a catch. Okay? No munitions. So we could sell you guns, but no bullets. We could send you planes, but no bombs. See, guys, guns don't kill people. Bullets kill people. And if we just send you guns, we're still neutral. Those are not American bullets killing you. That's, you know. That's Congress for you, right? Right? That's Congress. Okay? So isolationists, you know, they didn't like this, but they said this will keep us out. Whatever you got to tell yourself. Okay? Now, get this. There's a push in this country. In government class, we've been talking about how to propose an amendment and to ratify an amendment. 2 ways to propose, 2 ways to ratify. Okay? And so there's a proposal in Congress to propose an amendment that would require a popular vote to get a declaration of war by the United States. Okay? This makes us obviously more democratic, right? This would be the American people choosing whether we're going to send our sons, our daughters, our husbands, our wives, our parents off to die in war. And if we're going to make such a crucial decision about life and death of American people, shouldn't it be the American people that make that decision and not Congress? Let's be democratic about this real quick. No, you got to wait. Because you're going to steal my thunder stamp. Stop it. We're going to vote on this. How many of you guys would support a constitutional amendment that would require that if this country is going to go to war, we're going to have a vote on it? How many of you guys would support that? You're raising your hand, Sam?
Honestly, the thing is, I feel like more wars would be declared if we had a lot of people doing it.
You say like the mob could get really mad and like say, let's get those son of a guns. Yeah, that's a good point.
I know. I don't really trust the American people.
Oh, Lily says the American people, they're not very smart. That's what you're saying. And I don't trust them because the American people don't pay attention to the world around them. What do you know?
Not that I really trust Congress.
I don't trust either.
Yeah, right? You don't
But at
trust
least
it. I mean,
Congress knows they're there. Like,
they're briefed. Members of Congress are briefed on matters. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was not making a serious comment.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to live on a remote island with a bunch of llamas.
Okay. I'll be your neighbor. I'll be your neighbor.
Yeah, I'll allow
Okay.
it. I'll allow it.
Still hanging flags.
So listen,
You're all invited.
this is a horrible idea.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That was a stupid phrase. Yeah,
But I mean, really, if you think about it, guys, really, most people don't pay attention. Most people won't remember what I'm talking about today. Am I right? Some of you guys will forget it the day after the test. Okay, so now somebody like me, I pay attention, right? I know about world affairs. I know what's going on in Ukraine right now. Do you? Okay, so if Russia sent tanks into Ukraine, what are the implications of that on the world? Most people don't know. And really, educated people can only guess. You know what I mean? So, no, we make mistakes too. And when we talked about the Iraq War, guys, in 2003, I admitted to you, like most Americans, I supported that war, but I admitted to you that in retrospect, I feel like I was wrong. I think the president wrong, and I think Congress was wrong. That voted to give him permission to do it. They didn't declare war, but they voted to give him permission. And then they can blame him, and they don't have to take any responsibility because they didn't declare war. We've been doing that since Vietnam, you know, or since Korea. Yeah.
Actually have an amendment that prevents Congress from clapping the responsibilities to someone else.
You know, term limits would help with that.
Yeah, then you don't get
Term limits.
Oh, yeah.
His cult.
Guys, okay, is it safe to say that most of us now feel like this might be a bad idea?
Right.
Okay, 75% of the American people polled in 1937 supported this amendment.
Well, that just shows you how idiotic it was.
So FDR and Congress, they're like, no, we're not doing this, okay? So Congress wasn't gonna propose this. Now you could, you know, do the Convention of the States thing that, you know, I've been talking about, preaching about, okay, in my government classes, okay? So you could have done that, but Congress isn't gonna propose this, all right? All right, then, now get this, okay, 38, and if you can think back to last chapter, if that's still in your short-term memory. 38 was a tough year for Democrats, right? Remember the Roosevelt recession? Okay, and the purge of the Democratic Party of conservative Democrats, and Republicans do very well in 38. Listen to Roosevelt here in 38. He proposes a world conference to reduce arms and promote economic security. Now, if you're Britain or France in 1938, and Roosevelt says to you, hey, let's get together and get rid of our weapons. As Germany and Italy are about to go on the warpath. And Japan already is. Hitler is asking these nations to commit suicide. Is he not? No, I mean, guys, British Prime Minister at the time, and let me introduce you to Neville Chamberlain. This will be a very important figure in all of this, Neville Chamberlain, okay? He gives a resounding no to Roosevelt. Remember, guys, this is just politics. This is just politics. This isn't serious, okay? He's trying to get support of the American people. You follow me? Okay? Who's very isolationist, as we saw. Okay? So, yeah, the European powers will not take this seriously. Okay? And Neville Chamberlain realizes that at this point in time, Britain should be rearming, not disarming. Okay? And I'm going to give some praise to Neville Chamberlain here, and this will be the last time.
Was he short? Yeah, was he short?
No, not particularly.
He gives off short
Yeah,
vibes.
that's a very short person name. Do you have a picture?
Hey, yeah, where is he?
I mean, I don't think Willie's a short person. I think Neville Chamberlain.
Here we go.
As a British man.
Here we
I
go.
think you're a short person.
Thank you.
Are we gonna watch the video? I see so many videos on your
Yes,
site.
we should. It's a very thought-provoking video. Okay, so listen. Where's Hitler from?
Austria.
Okay, from a border town, right? So you do have a lot of Austrians that speak German. Okay, Austrians with German ancestry, and so forth. Okay, now I'm going to bring up a movie that I have a feeling quite a few people in this classroom have seen. Say, The Sound of Music. Raise your hand if you have seen The Sound of Music.
Raise the sound of music.
So many
I watched it 5 minutes. It's so boring.
What?
Your childhood was lacking.
It's so boring.
Are you kidding me?
I've seen the pacifier. And they had
Hey, stop. Stop. please watch The Sound of
Are you
Music.
really comparing the pacifier to the sound of music?
Oh, my goodness. This is my wife's favorite movie of all time.
It is, to be fair, it's like 3 hours. It's a musical.
It's a musical.
I don't want it.
All right, so those of you that are cultured and have seen this movie,
I feel so much better than everyone else.
no, the Von Trapp family is what the movie's about, okay? And the head of the family is an admiral, Admiral Von Trapp. The oldest daughter, Liesel, is dating a young man. Anybody remember his name?
No,
He's in that.
Is it Friedrich?
No. Roll.
Rolf.
She's
Rolf.
16 going on 17.
16 going on 17, that's right. And what is Rolf infatuated with? The Nazis. Okay, so again, when I mentioned the fifth column, it was particularly strong in Austria. Okay, so when the Germans amassed their army at the border with Austria, Austria will not fight. Okay, they are no match for the Germans. Okay, by 1938, Hitler has built up a very strong army. Okay, in violation of the Treaty of Versailles, of course. Okay, but nobody stepped up. Okay, so the Austrians, this is German troops marching across the border. Now you see this woman over here, right? This picture's in a lot of textbooks, but guys, these are not tears of pain, sorrow, fear. These are tears of joy.
Huh?
Listen, Hitler, the German army was met with waving flags, Nazi flags. All this was done in preparation for this day, okay? That Hitler would return and annex and reunite the Austrian, the people, the ones at least with German blood, back with the homeland, with the fatherland, okay? They were met with open arms, huge celebrations. Hitler returned to his hometown of Brunau to a crowd of hundreds of thousands of people. Okay, now, of course, guys, there are people in Austria that are scared to death. You understand? And I would say probably the majority of the population was very worried, okay? But it was the people that were brought out by this, okay? And the Austrian government really could not, I mean, their military could not stand up to the Germans. So they decided to avoid the bloodshed and not fight. Okay, so step 2, he takes the Rhineland. Step 1, nobody does anything. The French are scared. The British are scared, not wanting to fight. The Americans, no way. Here we go. Okay, so this will be the first country. And what he uses here, guys, as an excuse is that uniting of German blood. Okay, this is what he talks about. It's about bringing the German blood back into the fold of the fatherland. Okay, and guys, there's a lot of people of German ancestry living in these countries as well. Okay, these are both to the east, as Hitler said, Lebensraum, living space for the German people. Okay, so that's where we're going next. All right, now, at this point, the world has a choice, right? I mean, the world could try and stop it. If they got their crap together and said, look, if you don't stop, we're going to war, we're going to fight, and you start actually moving troops into position, you might be able to stop this guy, okay? But that's not going to happen. All right, so I do have a little video, and it talks about both this and today. Okay, when it comes to appeasement. Lily?
I thought the Jews, a lot of Jewish people during the Holocaust retreated to Poland.
Yeah.
So did Hitler never make it to Poland?
Oh, he did.
Okay.
That's where most of about 3 million of them in Poland, and then you have a whole bunch in Western Russia. Okay. Actually, this is a little bit different video. which is fine. And then I have the other one. That's more about appeasement. Okay, so let's watch this. Let me make sure I got this other video running back here. Okay. All right, get my volume up. And we get out 25. Okay, you guys just watch the video for tomorrow, and I'm going to continue along this line because he's going to go into Sudetenland. He's going to go, and appeasement is going to be like real here. Okay?
It was the 12th of March, 1938, and Hitler had finally emerged from his self-imposed inactivity. He crossed the border near his birthplace at Braunau. The people rejoiced at this first act of expansion, which they saw as the fulfillment of an old dream of the German nation, the Anschluss, an emphatic display of self-determination, a right denied to the German people under the Versailles Treaty, whose terms were generally considered unjust. Therefore, the foreign powers would not interfere. Visibly moved, he entered Vienna. And the city that had seen his early failures now gave him a hero's reception. Homage was being paid to the man who had achieved the unification of the German people. From the balcony of the Imperial Palace, he announced,
Als Führer und Kanzler der deutschen Nation und des Reichs wähle ich vor der Reichsgeschichte nunmehr den Eintritt meiner Heimat in das Deutsche Reich.
Without the tacit approval of fascist Italy, the Anschluss would not have been possible. Benito Mussolini had sacrificed his old friendship with Austria for the sake of a new alliance with Adolf Hitler. And Hitler was grateful. Hitler had worked hard to win favor with Italy's dictator. Mussolini's distrust of the powerful northern state was overcome only when Hitler lent his support to the Duce's aggressive foreign policy. The personal bond between the two was strengthened during visits to each other's country. Their political alliance became, in their emotive fascist terminology, the axis on which the destiny of the world would turn. Mussolini's visit to Germany in the autumn of 1937 ended with a nocturnal rally in the Olympic Stadium in Berlin. There was ambitious talk of world power.
Das faschistische Italien ist durch die geniale schöpferische Tätigkeit eines gestalteten Mannes zu einem neuen Imperium geworden. Wie Benito Mussolini werden in diesen Tagen mit eigenen Augen aber die Tatsache am nationalsozialistischen Staat festgestellt haben. Auch Deutschland ist in seiner volklichen Haltung und seiner militärischen Stärke wieder eine Weltmacht.
Mussolini declared his loyalty to Hitler for better or for worse. It was his virtual surrender to Hitler, the man he had despised.
Unsere beiden großen Völker, ihren Menschen die gewaltige und wachsende Masse von 115 Millionen betragen, zusammenspähen in eine einzige unerschütterliche Entschlossenheit.
Floods of rain, floods of emotion, and clever choreography. It was the ironic verdict of Canciano, the Italian foreign minister. Hitler's propaganda experts preferred to hold their ceremonies at night. Time and again, they organized torchlight processions to lend the proceedings a demoniac glow. The fascist cult of fire was an omen of the fire that was to consume the world.
Okay.
Now that guy's got short energy. He does.
I totally thought his voice was higher.
Yeah.
He seems like a,
100%.
no, he seems like he has a very high voice.
last thing, guys. So, guys, to annex just means to envelop. Okay? So they made it part of Germany. All right? And I'm going to cut off right there. All right.
Can you remind me again what the fifth column